Guys, this is Carl Reed with Coach Reed Live. Real Talk with Coach Reed Live here, 24/7 Sports. My guest today is Ken Clark, co host of Tiger Talk 1400 and alum of Jackson State University in the SWAC Conference. He's recording from Jackson today, homecoming, big game against Campbell. How are you doing, Mr. Clark?
First of all, Coach, appreciate you for having me on. Again, like you said, co-host Tiger Talk with the 1400 Club podcast. We cover all things Jackson State. Finally made it home. I feel good, Coach. I'm home. This is home for me. It's homecoming, and just excited, man. It's going to be a very fun weekend, and it's going to be a really good football game against Campbell. So we're definitely looking forward to it. I think the hype has built up, and we're excited to go see what our Tigers are going to do.
I got a heavyweight conversation for you, and I want to start with a fastball right down the middle. I got a
Okay.
lot of flack from HBCU fans, especially Jackson State fans, when I reported this summer that Georgia Tech had Deion Sanders in their sights. And then when I said something again about Auburn, I got over 2,000 messages
Woo.
about how there's no way Deion would leave Jackson State. Okay. Now he was on 60 Minutes the other day and he was
Right.
asked about it and he said he would have to entertain it.
Right.
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 How is the Jackson State community dealing with that remark?
Well, I'll answer that in two ways. I mean, first of all, you're experiencing what everybody I'm a part of it, and most don't know. We got a rowdy fan base, man. We lead FCS in attendance, and we're very passionate about our JSU Tigers. The other thing, Carl, is that we're excited about Coach Prime coming to Jackson. He's really ignited the fan base, and we're winning again. So we want to ride this train as long as we can. And it's social media. You put anything out there that goes against what some may not want to see happen. The world has made it very convenient through social media for us to be very, opinionated and very outspoken per se. But I think the reality of the matter is that if Coach Prime is being heavily, I would say, poached by other programs, and that means that Jackson State is winning because nobody really wants a coach that's not winning. So he has been very outspoken, first and foremost, about what his mission was. Say God called him collect, he accepted charges, and that he was here on a mission to, elevate HBCUs. And I think he's done a fantastic job of doing that. I mean, the exposure you've seen with Jackson State has just been unbelievable. It's been unlike anything I've ever seen in my entire life, and I've been a part of this since I've been on this earth, man. So I think it's more of an emotional thing. We love to see Coach Prime stay here as long as he'd like to stay here. We hope that I always say if Coach stay to 2030, I'm gonna be good, right? But we do also realize that we did go take the 6 minutes interview, and I'm gonna just say this from a business standpoint. Just take my blue and white glasses off. Carl, you and I, from a professional standpoint, we're professionals, family men and all that good stuff. If you got an opportunity to really, really, level up from a professional standpoint, we'd be foolish not to entertain it. Now he said he has to consider it, he has to. He's been very outspoken about, taking care of his coaching staff. I think, we have an opportunity. I love your article. I read it, and the last piece was you challenged Jackson or Jackson State. The ball is in our court to do what we need to do to make sure we're meeting the demands of Coach Prime and what it is going to take to keep him. So I think it's two sides of it. You get a lot of people on social media just talking, but in the end, it comes down to really understanding what he needs and what he wants, and us giving our best foot forward to try to do that. And if we can't, we live with it, and we thank Coach Prime for what he's done. But I'm not entertaining him leaving just yet. Hopefully he'll be here. I know Georgia Tech has a job. There's several job, I would say, opportunities that have opened up this season, and it's probably going to be some more when the season ends. But you know, I think HBCUs, we always feel like we overlooked and counted out, and anytime we feel like we got something good, someone's coming to take that from us. So you're gonna get a little bit of that element too. So, but I think that's really what you've experienced, Carl. But it's all good. We still got Coach Prime, and we gonna ride this train until the wheels fall off.
The big thing when I look at it, and when I was coaching Aquil Glass in high school, and he went to Alabama A&M, and you start to talk about HBCUs. One of the comparisons that I've heard for years is that kids should go to HBCUs instead of playing in the SEC or playing in the big time and things like that. I always felt like HBCUs kind of put themselves in a disadvantage a little bit because I don't think that it's fair to compare HBCUs to SEC schools and Big Ten schools because
Mhm.
those are FCS schools versus FBS schools. And even at the FCS level, when you look at a program like North Dakota State, who's had the same success that they've had. They had a coach leave for the University of Wyoming and Craig
Mhm.
Bowl. They had Chris Kleiman, who left North Dakota State to go to be the head coach now at Kansas State, and they're at the top of the Big 12 standing. I don't think necessarily it is a PWI versus a HBCU conversation. I think it's more of an FCS versus FBS conversation, and the
Fair.
resources that are available to the FBS level versus the FCS level. Do you what is your feeling on that when we're comparing those two entities?
I think the biggest thing is to separate the two in this instance. HBCUs really, from a monetary standpoint, can't compete with FBS or even some Group of Five programs, even some FCS programs, because of the things that we've been, and we could spend all day talking about some of the obstacles that we faced with HBCUs. Historically underfunded. Most HBCUs are usually, most all are in certain demographics of the United States. And if you just trace back the history of that, it'll take you back to a historical aspect where in times past, that's really where us as African Americans could only attend school. So now that you fast forward on our podcast, Tiger Talk with 1400 Club, we did a deep dive into kind of bookmarking, I want to say 71, when things kind of took a turn where FBS schools started poaching African American players and building and taking the black athlete and elevate their program. Now, here's the point though. When you fast forward to now, I like to look at it this way. Coach Prime said he wanted to level the playing field, right? And one of the things when you talk about leveling the playing field, there's so many other things that comes with. We're not going to sell against money because we know that we can't compete, but we're definitely rich in culture, we're rich in tradition. I know we're rich in a lot of things that come with that. And if you're selling that aspect of it, when you level something, that means that you're really you got to see at the same table. We're saying we want you to consider an HBCU just as if you would consider a Power Five program. However, the thing that we have to do is when we, like the coaches have stated, when we get that talent, we have to be able to develop that talent. We have to be able to get the talent to the next level. And it's very difficult to tell 17, 18-year-old kid and their family, hey, just choose an HBCU. Don't look at these other opportunities. And we don't really have the historical backing that shows that development is going to be there, professionalism is going to be there. Not saying the HBCUs aren't professional or anything, no, because I'm an HBCU, alum. So, but we have to have a very real conversation about it. And that's why this phenomenon of Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, coming to an HBCU, and now you're starting to see that if HBCUs, as he stated in the 60 Minutes interview, let's see what would happen if HBCUs could get some of those same resources. I think we could compete on that level. Our institutions are just as great from an educational standpoint. So when you look at it from that perspective, you're right. It isn't an FBS. I mean, it isn't a SEC versus an HBCU. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's more of a FBS or FCS conversation. But when you look at what COVID has done and you look at the elevation of the FCS landscape around us, it's been some very competitive football going on. You've been seeing a lot of FCS players get drafted, and we had a draft pick. We had 4 come out of HBCUs this past year. We got to continue to see that number increase, Carl, because in the end, kids want to get to the next level. So if we can get close to the numbers that it used to be back in the 70s, then we can have a very real conversation. But I think we're trending in the right direction. There was a point in time where there was no HBCU players get drafted, but last year we had 4. Let's see what 2023 is going to look like. If we get 7, 8 HBCU players to get drafted, then that conversation is going to start to pick up and gain even more momentum. So I think it's so many ways you can take that conversation, but I like to look at it from the standpoint of just consider HBCUs, do your homework. And that's where the coaches like yourself come into play. If you got an institution that's coming, that's recruiting a kid, hey, take those visits. Go see what they have to offer. We had an inquiry of over 1,000 kids that's going to be trying to get to this Jackson State Campbell as well as Jackson State Southern games to see the culture, see it for themselves, and really take official visits. So that's happening at Jackson State because of Coach Prime, obviously, and some other factors. But hopefully, we'll see that trend up for HBCU.
You know, I felt like, and I've said this to several coaches in the league before, I think that the SWAC is in a great position right now to use their conference as a place for big time coaches to come in and develop and get the experience they need to move up. I think they can be like what the MAC conference has been for the Big Ten and what the Sun Belt Conference has been for the SEC, and giving guys opportunities to be head coaches and show that they can run a program before they move on, because it's all going to come down to money in the end. Something that I want to ask you next. My first introduction to HBCU football was the Gateway Classic we used to have here in St. Louis. And Steve McNair came from Alcorn State and played here against Arkansas Pine Bluff. And everybody knows how great Steve McNair was. I got to see it live. I had never seen anything like it, you know, as a young man. And he ended up third in the Heisman voting that year, right? Now, Prime has said publicly, he's also said it to me privately, that he feels like Shedeur should be in the mix for the Heisman campaign. How do you feel like Shedeur Sanders has a reasonable case to put, you know, to be in the Heisman conversation?
I think the Heisman, I like Coach Prime's perspective on it. He says if a kid is good enough to get drafted out of an HBCU, then why can't an FCS or HBCU kid be good enough to enter the Heisman race? When you look at stats, and that's what people say were the biggest gripe that comes from this conversation, Carl, and I remember that speaking to Steve McNair, even though I'm a JSU, you know, through and through, right? My first game for an HBCU, I actually went to go see Steve McNair because my childhood friend, my mom was an alum at Alcorn. So Steve McNair was just godly, man, during that time, you know, and one of the greatest to ever do it. And when you go back to the history of that, Alcorn started in campaign because if you look at the numbers, his senior season was unbelievable. His stats were just out of this world, and I thought he should have, you know, he definitely had it. He should have won it, honestly. He was the best football player in college, but politics and, you know, they didn't want to give it to him. I think when you get to it from an NCAA standpoint, I think the powers that be, this is my personal opinion, like to, you know, protect certain things and not create a precedent that they feel can get out of control. Because when you have to, you know, put time and energy covering all FBS, all Power 5 programs, and then now you got to do the work to cover all these FCS programs, it's easier to just kind of close the door on the FCS and say, those are 6-3, don't really qualify. This Heisman is more of a Power 5, or I should say FBS award. Then you have the Walter Payton Award for the FCS. So that's really the Walter Payton Award is really the FCS Heisman. But from to specifically answer your question, I absolutely believe Shedeur should be in that conversation. Here's why I say that. You got to look at wins. He's a winner. You know, Shedeur has not lost a SWAC game in his 2 years. You know, I know we can look at the stats. You have the kid out of Fordham. You have Lindsey Scott over at Incarnate Word. That's balling. But style of play may be a little different. When you look at 6-0, undefeated in the SWAC, the purpose of what Coach Prime has been doing is to put his name in that conversation. So the conversation, if he didn't say what he said, Carl, you wouldn't have never asked that question. People wouldn't be. I don't mind people, the naysayers. I don't mind the people that say, "Oh man, that's ludicrous. Why are y'all even talking about that? That's ridiculous." If he didn't mention it, we wouldn't have the conversation. So now that he said it, you have to deal with it. And now he's really looked at. And hey, you might get a lot more eyes on Jackson State. Say, let me go look at this Shador fella and see what Coach Prime is talking about. I know that's his son, but here's the beauty of that, Carl. While you're looking at a Shador, you can see a Dallas Daniels, that great wide receiver that he's throwing the ball to. You can see a Shane Hooks that's catching, ESPN, top 10 plays, and you can see a Stavion Wilkerson, and the list goes on and on and on. But when it comes down to will he actually get the real consideration from the voters? That's yet to be determined. I know the kid out of Tennessee is killing it right now. They just beat Alabama. But the question you're gonna have to ask yourself is, are you willing to give it to an FBS player that lost multiple games? Because way college football is going, it's possible that the top 4 or 5 teams could all have a loss on their record. Now, let's say we get to the end of the season, Shador finishes with 4,000 plus yards, 40 plus touchdowns, and he's undefeated. I think that conversation is going to be a little bit more impactful then, but probably right now people say, oh, he ain't played the fight. Let's go see him versus Campbell. So he just got to continue to play well. If he plays well, this conversation will still be up there. And shout out to Robert Griffin III because he keep putting him in there in his list. So, but again, Robert wouldn't put him in his list if coach didn't say that.
When I look at you got your big homecoming game this weekend. I know it's a bunch of top recruits on campus this weekend. Can you explain to the viewers briefly, what is a HBCU Jackson State homecoming environment like for these recruits when they come in? What makes this weekend? Deion said that Travis Hunter coming in on homecoming weekend was the thing that sealed the deal. What is the environment going to be like this weekend at Jackson State?
This environment is going to be like I would say nothing we've ever seen before. I've seen it because I've lived in it and I've experienced it multiple times. But I would even say this: the past 2 homecomings, including this homecoming, Carl, is going to be very similar to how it used to be back in the day in our heyday when the vet was rocking. You're talking a 60,000 seat stadium that's filled with history, and I like what both coaches have said. Coach Prime and Coach Mike Minter, who's the head football coach for Campbell, both played at the highest level with the NFL, right? Mm-hmm. And they both have played in stadiums filled, 100,000 fans, right? Loud stadiums. They played in big atmospheres. But we're an HBCU, and that means historically Black college and university. There's not many places you can go where you can see 60,000 African Americans all in one place in unison. I mean, and you know what comes with that pageantry that comes with it. It's the culture, the vibe. Then you got the Sonny Boom in the South. Then you got the fans. It's unbelievable. Like I just thinking about it, I'm trying not to get too overwhelmed, Carl, because I know once we enter that stadium, man, it's gonna be electric. And we look around and we see from those fans feeling from top corner. Because that's what I look at when the games are packed. I look at that top left corner and the top right corner. If those are packed, oh, it's about to be crazy. So. The recruits are going to see something. It's different when you see it on a video. That's one thing. But when you're actually in that stadium and all the chants, all the noise, all the the unison, that you see with the fans, and we're imploring all of our fans, we want to be loud, we want to be rowdy, we want to be disruptive, we want to make it. We don't want Campbell to come in and have a good time. We still got to play the football game, but many of those recruits and players feel like they have to go to these big time programs to get that type of environment. Because when you look around the landscape of HBCU football as well as FCS football, there's only one place you can go where you can get 6,000 in a home game. Not a neutral site, not a classic. This is a Jackson State homecoming, and it's going to be one for the Asians and all of these kids. I can tell you right now, Twitter's going to be on fire, man. Come Saturday night, come Sunday morning, and all throughout the remainder of the week, especially if Jackson State can pull out and get a big win against Campbell. So I think you just got to come experience. You got to come to the next one, man. I tell you, it's unlike anything. I know about the tailgating. I get all that. I'm talking about being inside that stadium. It brings chills to you, man. It's something like I've never seen before, but this is what I'm a part of.
I'm going to give you 3 names. I'm going to give them to you one at a time. And one word only, I want you to answer what has been significant about them and their relation to Jackson State and their contribution to Jackson State football. The first, so I'm gonna put you on the spot. The first name, Jackie Slater.
Oh my goodness, man.
One word, Ken. One word.
One word for Jackie Slater. Pioneer.
Okay.
I'm in the California area. Jackie Slater has been a part of the Los Angeles Rams, and he's still a part of that franchise. But Jackie Slater, pioneer. Pioneer. I'll use that word.
Walter Payton.
GOAT. I know that might be 4 words. I can say sweetness, everything, but I'm gonna say GOAT.
Okay. And the last one, Deion Sanders.
Prime time. Let me give you a word in relation to Jackson State. Godsend.
All right.
Godsend.
Gods.
He means everything to us, and we are more than appreciative. I'm gonna say, can I throw this one thing? I know you have a really pretty good following, and a lot of our fans watch your show and watch you. I'm just imploring that our fans enjoy the ride now. Do not wait till later. I'm telling you, take advantage of this time. Carl, that's what I went all in. I was like, you know what? I'm not missing this. I am going to do everything I can to get to as many games. Because what I don't want to do, I don't want to have that cognitive distance. I don't want to look back and say, man, I wish I only would have. If I only had. No, enjoy that moment now. If you're in Jackson, hey man, come experience this thing, man. Try to be a part of this whole experience, because we are actually living history right now. And this is one for the ages, man. And you want to be a part of it and not just let it pass you by. So that's all I got for our Tiger fans, man.
Right.
Those that are new to the party, hey, welcome.
Ken, can you tell everybody where to follow you on social? Where can they get your podcast at and listen, check you out at?
Absolutely. Tiger Talk with the 1400 Club. We're on YouTube, Spotify, shucks, man, Apple Music, every podcast outlet. Just type in Tiger Talk with the 1400 Club. My name is on the screen, Ken Clark _1400. You can follow me on Instagram. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm mostly active on Twitter, Carl, Ken Clark _1400. Hey, I'm a typical Jackson State fan. If you come for the JSU Tigers, we're going to respond. We get a little rowdy, but it's all in fun. It's all in love. We kind of got that be against the world mentality, man. So, but Ken Clark _1400, Tiger Talk with the 1400 Club on YouTube. Go subscribe now. We got a great preview, Jackson State versus Campbell preview. One thing that we do every time we play a team, we bring their media team on to talk about their program. So that's one unique thing that we do. So we'd love to have you come on our YouTube channel and check out all the great content, all the interviews and so forth and so on.
Well, guys, we want to thank Ken for coming on. Ken, thank you very much for joining us today. For Ken Clark, I'm Coach Reed Live, and this is Real Talk.